by the way. He's been a lawmaker in District 50 of the Texas House of Representatives, and not long ago became the head of Google Fiber in Austin. He's going to tell us about that. So welcome, Mark, and thanks for being here. And forward and backward and laser, and ignore the other one.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so I really am the last one before beer. And he's already given it up that I'm probably the only liberal arts major in the room, so this is really not good. We can do this as quickly as you want. There is an easy way for you to signal that you've had enough. You can go have a beer. I won't be offended. I actually am going to be quick because I'm due to my wife at 6 o'clock. So let me ask first, because I'm trying to figure out how to calibrate my comments here. How many of you are from here in Austin? Okay. So now I know what you want to know. But I can't tell you. You want to know the same thing every group I go to wants to know, which is, when is it coming to my house? And I'll do my best to give you some visibility without painting too detailed a picture of things we can't say. And I'll just tell you, for those of you who are in Austin and know that, we announced Google Fiber, and when I say we, I mean they. I didn't work there yet. Google announced that Austin was the second city chosen for Google Fiber in April of 2013. In May of 2013, everybody started saying, what's taking so long? I got hired in July of 2013, and honestly, when I was, and Al mentioned I had a background in technology entrepreneurship, and I thought I was returning to my roots as an internet entrepreneur. If you had told me that the way Google was going to make the internet 100 times faster was by sprinkling fiber fairy dust around Austin at that time, I would have probably believed you. I didn't realize that what I was really entering was not an internet business so much as an infrastructure business. And that my primary occupation, at least for this first year or so that I've been on the job, has been managing 3,000 miles of new plant construction. 3,000 miles is the distance from here to the southern border of Canada and back. And about half of that construction is attaching to existing aerial infrastructure, which is still not as easy as it sounds. And about half of that construction is new underground plant, and that is as hard as it sounds. And that's the work that I've been doing for the year and a half, and the reason that it's so hard to answer the question that everybody asks at every forum that I go to, which is, when are we going to get it? The reason it's so hard is because, for those of you who have worked on construction, there are just too many externalities that are outside the control of any one entity. And so we have gone this far. We have, honestly, I think it's in my slides, so maybe I'll wait and tell you more about our timeline as I go through. I'm going to preach about speed for a minute to a group that I don't think really needs to hear a whole bunch of why it's important to have speed. But you probably know that Google is deeply invested in the speed of the internet. Obviously, it makes everything else Google does work better. From Google Play to Google Hangouts to obviously search to YouTube. A slow internet isn't good for the user, and it's not good for Google. And so Google, as I understand the history of how Google Fiber became a Google priority, it was during discussions at Google on the National Broadband Plan 3 or 4 years ago, and we'd been asked to submit comments to the FCC, and as I understand it, Sergey Brin walked into the group that was planning the policy communications about it, and he said, we got to stop asking the government to do this. We got to put our money where our mouth is and show them what's possible. And that's how Google Fiber started. When Google announced that it was going to do fiber to the home in one city, 1,100 cities submitted applications requesting to be that city. Austin was one of them, but was not chosen on the first go-round. 1,100 applications, and it was pretty remarkable. I mean, one city famously renamed itself Google for a day by act of the city council. And ultimately, Kansas City was chosen to be first. Kansas City did a really good job of recruiting Google and pitching its own assets. So I don't want to belabor the point about speed, but I talk a lot when I talk about this at neighborhood associations. You know, a lot of people do ask, what am I going to do with a faster internet? The internet feels pretty fast to me today. And I remind them, you know, when you had broadband, and as soon as I say the word broadband, they all roll their eyes and groan. When you had broadband, you know, you roll your eyes and groan about it now. We can all agree broadband sucked, right? We all know that. When you had broadband, you didn't think it sucked. You thought it was awesome. I thought it was awesome. I could send an email. I could go to a web page and hope it didn't have any pictures that I needed to load, right? And nobody really thought to themselves in a broadband world, oh man, nobody really thought to themselves in a dial-up world. Have I been saying broadband all these times when I meant to say dial-up? I meant dial-up every time I said broadband. Whew, substitute. You thought dial-up was great because you could send an email, you could see a website. And you didn't think to yourself, man, if the internet was faster, I'd go to YouTube, because there wasn't a YouTube. If the internet was faster, I'd do Netflix, because there wasn't a Netflix. In a dial-up world, it didn't make sense to develop those applications. They wouldn't work. And the same is essentially true of the evolution that is beginning to occur from broadband to gigabit speeds. The applications for gigabit speeds today really are just the same applications you're using in a broadband-enabled world. They'll just work better. They'll work faster. No more buffering, no more waiting for the circle to go around. That'll be great, and that matters. That, you know, we do tests. Google does tests where we shrink the image of Google Maps just a little bit to see what the effect is for users when the page loads a little bit faster. With literally huge samples of A/B tests, when people get a slightly smaller image that loads almost imperceptibly faster, those users use Google Maps 20% more. I have 5 and 7-year-old daughters. They don't know what Wi-Fi is. They don't know what a wireless router is. But when I came home early from work a few months ago, they were huddled in this corner of the house that no one ever sits in, playing on the iPad. No one really ever sits in this corner of the house, but that's where they chose to play with the iPad. They didn't know that that was the chair next to the wireless router, but that's where they had migrated toward. That's the place in the house where the internet is most responsive. No one told them that. They figured it out by trial and error. And they didn't figure it out consciously. They just kind of ended up there. That's how responsive we are to speed on the internet. So in light of that, it's disturbing. This slide says 8th. There are various ranking systems. The most recent Akamai report says we're 14th in the world for average internet speeds. And that's despite the fact that our speeds have boosted, our average speeds have boosted significantly in the last few quarters because of what's happening. And I think what I would argue what's happening across the country right now is a bit, it may be the beginning of a revolution similar to the one that transpired when we evolved from dial-up to broadband. We also pay more per megabit than the countries that we compete with. And not only is speed important in terms of the responsiveness and the satisfaction of using the internet and the capabilities of using the internet, but you know, I just believe that the places where internet service is fastest and most affordable are the places where innovation that is unrelated to the internet but related to healthcare delivery systems and education and all the other things that the internet isn't at the core of but that the internet enables. All those things, our competitiveness in those areas is a function of us being competitive on the internet in terms of speed and affordability. So I talked a little bit about the migration from dial-up to broadband. I talked about it all wrong. But there was one point in history when internet speeds had a slope similar to Moore's Law. And that was when we migrated from dial-up to broadband. And then it went essentially flat and has been flat almost ever since. But what's happening now is, I think, a change, an acceleration. It's not just happening in Kansas City and Austin and Provo, the 3 markets that Google Fiber is in. There is Chattanooga, Tennessee, which has fiber to the home through a municipally deployed network partnering with their electric cooperative. And there are a lot of cities around the country who are now really prioritizing this. And we are exploring 9 additional metropolitan areas for possible expansion, but other providers are now increasing their speeds significantly and doing so at a lower price in some cases than what they charged for slower speeds previously. There is a disruption happening in the marketplace. There's no guarantee of its persistence, and there are probably going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back dynamics. There was one this week. But I tend to think that this is going to be a hard trend. I tend to think that we're on the right track now. So I don't think I'm going to, I think everybody here, my sense of the little time I've been here this afternoon is that you guys know how hard it is to build a network. This is a slide that I show, and the next one are slides that I show at these neighborhood association meetings where everybody's saying, why is it taking so long? And what I will tell you is that the process of building this thing is really just extraordinarily complex. I'm just stunned by what I watch our outside plant engineers and construction managers deal with every day. Because you cannot build 3,000 miles of plant overnight, what we will do in Austin is, as we complete a segment of the network, we will open signups in that area of town, let people sign up, even as we're building the next neighborhoods over. So it will feel a little bit, I don't know, it's going to be hard to explain. This is a difficult communications challenge for us to explain why, with existing networks, you just call up wherever you live and you say, send an installer. For us, we actually have a really pretty rigid process by which you sign up for service and get installed. So when we open signups, and we have announced now that that area, that shaded area of South Austin and Southeast Austin, will open signups next month. When we open signups, there will actually be a window during which you can sign up. And if you don't sign up during that window, you won't get another chance to sign up for a while, because once we've installed folks in that area of town, we've got to take the installer capacity and move it to the next area of town. We can't keep installing in the areas we previously opened for signups, because otherwise we'll never make it through the entire city. Same is true of the outside plant development. And there is one other caveat to this process, which is only if enough people sign up from a given area will we build the network out the last mile in that area. So not every area will qualify. In Kansas City, where we went through this process over the last couple of years, about 90% of what we call fiber hoods qualified for the service. But there's no guarantee that it'll be 90% here. It'll really be a function of demand and how many people sign up for the service. So it's a little bit different than what people are used to. Because of this complexity of this process, our portal will be the main way of communicating to the public how to get the service and how close you are to getting the service. And that's a screenshot from the portal in Kansas City. And what you can see is, though not every community gets the service, every community has the chance to get the service, and there is a transparent process by which a community can organize itself to get the service. So you can go to the portal, put in your address, find out what fiber hood you're in, find out who else is in that fiber hood, not by name, but you can geographically see what the boundaries are of your fiber hood, and you can see on that portal exactly how many signups are needed for your fiber hood to qualify for service. And what we saw in Kansas City was people organized, almost like it was a political campaign, to get fiber hood across the finish line, to get people signed up and make sure that the whole community had access to this service. So that's what we're doing. And I think I finished that in with enough time that we can have questions if you have any. And if you want to go get a beer, you can do that.
Microphone guy? I have a quick one,
Mhm.
quick obvious one. So you said in December, and where will we go? I noticed that I'm right in the middle of that green area. So that-
Really? Good for you. That's good to know.
Yeah, but now I have to, what, like go online or something? Or?
Yes. We haven't announced the specific day when you can sign up, but when we do announce it, it would be hard for you not to hear about it. We are planning quite a big about quite a splash, and now that I got your email address, you'll hear about it from me. And what you will do is go sign up online, and when you sign up, you'll also see all the information on the portal about your fiber hood, so that if you want to not just sign up but make sure that you qualify, there will be tools available to you to help you notify your neighbors that now is their opportunity to sign up as well. And you'll be able to see the deadline for sign-ups in your neighborhood.
Sir, what drove you to start with South and Southeast Austin? Was it ease of construction or some other factor?
No, I wouldn't say ease of construction because that's actually a challenging area to construct. But I would say it is really it is always going to be a function of network architecture and construction dynamics. It's never a matter of we said, oh, well, that area, we want to go there first. We're not using any social considerations or value judgments in the way we roll it out. It's just about how we can most efficiently build the whole city and where we finish first.
Okay, and then what percentage of homes do you need to sign up in a fiber hood to qualify?
Yeah, it's
80%, or?
It's different from fiber hood to fiber hood because that is partly a function of construction costs. So if you live in an area that's served through aerial infrastructure, it'll probably be a lower percentage of all the households in that community than if it's an underground area with lots of limestone. And so that's why we publish the number on the portal so you can see. Yes, sir.
There's a difference between Austin and Kansas City in that in Austin you've drawn a competitive response from AT&T and Grandee and to some extent Time Warner. Has that changed the dynamics of getting people to sign up and so forth, and where you might go next?
It hasn't, but it's been great for Austin. It's a good point. And for any of you who are not from Austin and don't know it, we are not the only gigabit service provider in Austin, and this is part of why I'm kind of confident and excited about the trajectory in the future is toward a gigabit-enabled internet. There are now 3 gigabit providers in Austin, and not only speeds have gotten really good in Austin, but pricing has gotten really good in Austin. I'm not part of the team that chooses what markets we'll go to after this, but I don't think that has much of an impact on where we go next. I am part of the team that's responsible for making sure we get enough subscribers in Austin to justify the investment we've made here, and so it does factor into my day to day, and it just means we have to work really hard here to earn the consumer trust.
Yeah, just kind of following up on that question, since this is a wireless summit after all, this kind of reminds me this whole Google Fiber thing of WiMAX from about 8 years ago, which was a wireless standard that kind of came out of left field from IEEE. Intel and some non-incumbents pushed it really heavily. It wasn't successful in a direct financial sense, but it made LTE, the current 4G standard, probably be sped up by 3 to 5 years. And in that sense, Intel felt it was a success, at least people I've talked to at Intel, similar to some of the Google type secondary concerns that you've mentioned. Is this a sort of Google strategy here to kind of make, to kind of prod the cables and AT&T out of their lethargy and provide true gigabit service for all of America, competitive price?
Right. So get asked that all the time. The only person who could really answer that would be Larry Page, right? How would I know what the end scheme is? But I will say this. I do think that there's a future in which we have gigabit intensive applications on the internet. And so whether gigabit speeds are enabled by fiber to the home or some other technology might be a fair analogy, but I do think gigabit speeds are an end game worth pursuing. And it would be really interesting to think about all the other ways you can get there, that we read about them all the time. None of them really commercially viable right now that I'm aware of. But I will tell you I will tell you it's impossible to know what the killer app will be that will all say some years from now we'll all say, oh man, what did we do when we didn't have gigabit speeds? As we now sit around and say, what did we do when we had dial-up? It's impossible to know what it'll be, but I see a few examples of what it might be like in my day-to-day at Google. At Google, internally, Google meetings are all done by multi-party video conference, off-the-shelf Hangout technology, but it's pretty bandwidth hungry. It's not, if you have more than a few people, if essentially the way we normally communicate by phone becomes communicating by video conference, just normatively, and if 3 or 4 people are in your house are on the phone, that's pretty bandwidth consumptive. It gets you pretty close to gigabit consumption rates pretty soon. And so I think we will, I think gigabit speeds are the way to go. I will tell you this, once you get used to video conferencing in high def, and maybe I'll do it all the time in your business, but I had not done it before I went to work at Google. I mean, video conferencing on a big screen in high def with no pixelation and no asynchronicity between voice and video, when you have that experience, it's weird for the first 5 minutes actually. By the second 5 minutes, it feels really normal, and by the second day, it's the first technology that's come into your life since cell phone and email that you think, what did I do without this? And now I can't stand talking on the phone to a disembodied voice. It's just a totally unsatisfying user experience once you get used to seeing the person that you're talking to.
Okay, I got a couple questions. First question is on, is Google thinking about hanging wireless access points off their fiber network to offer a more ubiquitous service in Austin as a potential extension? And the second one's a selfish question. I live in a suburb called Cedar Park, north of here. And is there any plans for Google to expand into some of the suburbs of Austin?
That's the kind of question I usually get. Let me take the second one first. We have not announced any expansion areas yet. Cedar Park, we have a lot of people we have a lot of people on my team who live in Cedar Park, so they have a voice at the table, let me just say that. And I do hear from the surrounding municipalities a lot. I just got to keep my own mentality and my team's mentality focused on getting Austin right, and that'll solve itself. Wireless access points around town. I think I really actually wanted another person from our team to come here and talk today, from somebody from Mountain View. I know y'all had Luke earlier. But there are people who are working on wireless at Google who are so much smarter than me, and I know Luke was one of them. Within fiber, we have folks working on wireless. We haven't yet fully formulated a plan to apply it in Austin, so we're still thinking about that.
I just don't want Cedar Park to be known that we wanted in Southwest Austin as well, so just so you know that.
But Southwest Austin, or outside the city limits, or in?
Kind of Barton Creek and down in that area.
Inside the city limits. Inside the city limits, you're good, man. You just got to get enough people in your neighborhood to sign up.
I think you meant west of Mopac.
West of Mopac is good. So let me make sure everybody, that map is just where we're starting. And we'll finish signups and we'll be installing people there, and we'll continue to deploy, and then we'll open signups in the next segment of town where we finished construction. And it's going to be a rolling process for the coming months. But if you're in the city limits of Austin, you're good.
Well, for my Uber super high-speed Time Warner system that just upgraded free to 300 megabits per second. At 8 o'clock in the evening when everybody's streaming Hulu, I get about 8.
Yeah.
What has been the experience of Google Fiber in providing real bandwidth, say in your first deployment, when the numbers get heavy?
It's a dedicated fiber to your home. So in Kansas City, it's a gig, and it's a symmetrical gig, and it's a symmetrical gig during prime time. By the way, I should say this about the symmetrical nature of the connection. This will be my last comment because I know y'all got to go. Here it is. Increases in speed are just differences in degree, right? But they enable differences in kind. The way you use the internet in a broadband-enabled world is different in kind from the way you use the internet in a dial-up enabled world. And we don't know what the applications will be that are enabled by a gig that we haven't thought of today, but they could fundamentally just change the way you use the internet in a way that's not different in degree, in a way that's different in kind. And the most likely way that it'll change, my speculation of the most likely way that it'll change, is that the symmetrical nature of the connection changes the way you relate to the internet from a place where you primarily receive information and secondarily share it to a place where receiving and sharing information sit on equal playing fields, because the bandwidth to do both is equal. And I just suspect that when people start thinking about, okay, what are we going to do with this new capacity in the internet, the ability to share as quickly as you receive information will drive some of the changes.
The bar closes in 3 minutes.
Okay, let's go get it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming, by the way, and Richard.